But for many of the Democrats, many of the Republicans watching, that candidate is named 23. The 23 seats the Democrats need to take control of the House. Now, the 7 o'clock hour has arrived, and we have the following projections. In Indiana, in the Senate race there, the Donnelly race, we're calling it too close to call at the top of the 7 p.m. hour. In Vermont, no surprise, the re-election of Bernie Sanders, the independent who caucuses with the Democrats. In Virginia, no surprise, Hillary Clinton's former running mate, Tim Kaine. This is the race Kaine was in against Corey Stewart, who made a big splash early, not so much along the home stretch. The U.S. Senate at this hour, and this, of course, is fluid and will change all night. That is the undecided portion in gray of the U.S. Senate. We'll fill in those seats as we go. And a race so many of you are following, so many people have asked about. Georgia, governor, too early to call. Abrams versus Kemp. But Steve Kornacki sure looks busy over there at that board. Steve, what do you have? You see there on the graphic what we're coming up on. We're 10 seconds away here, 7:30 poll closings. And Steve Kornacki, we're coming to you after we have the results so far, at least tonight, in the 7:30 closings. In West Virginia, a closely watched Senate race. Joe Manchin, speaking of deciding how to handle the Kavanaugh matter, too early to call. Ohio Senate, too early to call, though Sherrod Brown is in the lead thus far and has the advantage. The Senate at this hour, again, pay attention to the undecided, the vacant gray seats in the center over party balance this early in the evening. Ohio governor, too early to call at 7:30 Eastern time. And one of the big races we keep touching on, so many people are following, Georgia governor, too early to call. Over to Steve Kornacki at the board. What do you have?
Steve, I understand that we've got some new important...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first flip of the night. Here it is, the 10th District of Virginia. We just told you the Democrats got the level of support they needed in the key county in Virginia 10. We are now projecting that Virginia 10 will be a pickup for Democrats. That means Barbara Comstock, the Republican, defeated for re-election. And that means critically that our countdown here, we said Democrats need a net gain of 23 seats. It goes down to 22. So Democrats are now 22 away from control of the House. Again, we said this would be a catastrophe for Democrats if they weren't carrying the 10th. We figured this would be the first to be called. Mark it down, though. That is the first to be called on this night. Quickly, though, to bring you back to Florida, because we got a lot more vote that just came in Florida, and I want to quickly take you through it. These three counties right here are the heart of any Democrats' chances in the state of Florida. We
do have a call. This is in the Ohio Senate race. Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is projected to hold on to his seat in Ohio, fending off a Republican challenge from Jim Renacci, who had closely aligned himself with President Trump. Sherrod Brown had been somebody who Republicans had sort of salivated at the prospect of knocking off very early on in this prospect, but he will, it looks like, comfortably hold on to his seat tonight. Steve, let me get back to you there. Sorry, my friend.
When you look at the race, the issue I think that we're going to see play out over the...
We've got a call.
Yeah, we've got another flip. You have your second flip of the night. This is the 27th District of Florida. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, the Republican who declined to seek re-election. This seat is now going to go Democratic. This is one that Democrats were worried about a few weeks ago. They nominated Donna Shalala against a former television anchor here. A district Hillary Clinton won by 20 points, but there's a large Cuban-American population here. There was a concern that Shalala was not faring well as a candidate, but now we've projected she has won the 27th district. This is a flip. This is the second Democratic pickup of the night. They began the night needing 23. They now only need 21. We've also made a call in the same area, the third Miami-Dade-based Republican-held seat, Mario Diaz-Balart. He has held on, and I believe we have another call just coming in right now. We said that district, that Charlottesville-based district, Democrats were hoping to win. We said that Riggleman was doing well in the Trump part of the district. He was doing very well. Denver Riggleman projected to be the winner there. Democrats do not get the pickup, so we now have 5 calls from our target list. Democrats have picked up 2 of them. Both of these districts, be clear on this, both of these districts were those districts that Hillary Clinton had won in 2016, now throwing out Republicans when it comes to Congress. So Democrats now have taken 2 off that target list in the House.
Steve Kornacki at the board, thank you. We're coming up on 30 seconds away from the 8 o'clock Eastern calls, a huge list. We're going to go after the Senate races first. We're going to break internally, then we'll take a look at the governor's races. But here is the list of states we'll be coming up on, starting with Alabama, ending with Tennessee. We've had some split closing times as we approach, again, the 8 o'clock hour here in the East. And we're going to start with one that we've been covering tonight. We just don't have the finishing data on it as 8 o'clock arrives. Florida governor, too close to call at this hour. Florida Senate, also too close to call. Missouri Senate, closely watched race tonight, too close to call at this hour. Tennessee Senate, too early to call. Blackburn is the early leader in that race. Massachusetts Senate, and the next 6 people are going back to work in the Senate. Let's just say that. Elizabeth Warren, no surprise. Connecticut Senate, Chris Murphy going back, no surprise. Delaware, Carper is going back. The Democrat, no surprise there. Ben Cardin in the state of Maryland. In the state of Pennsylvania, Senator Bob Casey. In the state of Rhode Island, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Over to New Jersey, too early to call, though Bob Menendez is in the lead, something of a huge undertaking given the campaign that Hugan mounted against him. Angus King, the independent in Maine, who caucuses with the Democrats, too early to call. He is in the lead, however. And then in Mississippi, this is, by the way, look at the current Senate. Again, those undecided seats in gray. That's what to concentrate on until we get a little later in the evening. I got ahead of myself. Mississippi Senate. We have 2 races. We're calling them 1 and 2. Too early to call? Too early to call. When we have a minute, we'll explain just how this is going to work in the state of Mississippi.
We may end up looking at, we may be looking at a runoff in Mississippi Senate and that race there on the right. We want to go back to Steve Kornacki right now because while Brian has been running down those Senate and governor's calls, Steve has been getting in the data to, I think, call a few more of these House races, right, Steve?
Yeah, we don't have any more calls, but
no problem. Governor's races are an important part of tonight. We have a partial list of them. Again, some of these closings were at 8 o'clock. In Florida, however, too close to call. We're watching it.
Wow, very close.
To the state of Pennsylvania we go. Wolf, the projected winner, Governor Tom Wolf. Tennessee, Lee. Massachusetts, Baker. Illinois, too early to call, though. Pritzker is in the lead. Alabama, too early to call, though Ivey is in the lead. Rhode Island, too early to call. Raimondo is in the lead. And in Georgia, too early to call. Another widely watched race tonight where the numbers, the early raw has been all over the map.
10% in that Georgia governor's race that year. You mentioned the Illinois race.
We have 2 calls to pass along to our viewers. From Illinois, we are projecting Pritzker wins as the next governor of the state of Illinois. A pickup for the Democrats and a hold in Maryland as Larry Hogan will be returning. We have one more Rhode Island governor. It's going to be Raimondo. Gina Raimondo, the Democrat. And let's go over to James Carville. Longtime Democratic strategist, and Rachel's warning, her admonition at the top of the evening, and it might be a very late night, remains true. That holds even at this hour of 8:30. So here we are. The poll has closed. Polls have closed in Arkansas. We are projecting Governor Hutchinson is handily reelected there. And on to the other 2. We're watching. Florida, too close to call. Georgia, too early to call. So projected on the side of the building we sit in.
Georgia race again, only 16% of that vote in.
In the Senate race in the state of New Jersey. New Jersey remains blue. Menendez, who had so many ethical and legal troubles, has turned away. Former pharma executive Bob Hugin ran an aggressive race, especially in the media markets of New York and Philadelphia. But we are projecting when it's all said and done, Bob Menendez returns to the U.S. Senate from New Jersey.
Yeah, we've had Kentucky 6. We've had our eye on this one all night. We've now officially made a projection here. Andy Barr, the Republican incumbent, is going to hang on in this district, holding off Amy.
Hey, Steve, I have to interrupt you. Indiana Senate, Republican pickup. Donnelly has been turned away. This has just come into us. Mike Braun. Donald Trump worked hard to flip this seat from the Democrats. We are estimating that when all the votes are counted, this will be a GOP pickup in the Senate. Steve Kornacki, back to you.
Yeah, the other big piece of news we have from you comes from our decision desk that has been watching these early House results, seeing Democrats get what they need.
At this point, we've just got a call just ahead. We're waiting for poll closings at 9, but we have a new call right now. This is the West Virginia Senate race. NBC News can project that Democrat Joe Manchin will hold on to his seat in West Virginia. This was obviously a state that Trump won by huge double digits in 2016. That made Republicans very excited about the prospect of knocking off Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is a home state senator above all else. He is a moderate Democrat, much in the mold of Claire McCaskill, who's fighting for her seat tonight in Missouri. But Joe Manchin will be returning back to the Senate, and that will make the Democrats happy, especially given that just moments ago it looks like they have lost Joe Donnelly's seat out of Indiana. New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, Wyoming, all of those states are pulling in their poll closings right now.
9 p.m. in the East has just turned, and here we go. These are our latest projections. Texas Senate, too early to call. We're giving Cruz a slight lead in this race as of now. Texas governor, reelected the winner, Governor Abbott. Here is the two-way race of the Texas governor's race as we look at the math that went into this. Wisconsin Governor Evers is the lead, but officially too close to call. Arizona Senate, too close to call. Remember, these western states just coming in. North Dakota Senate, too early, though so far Kramer is leading. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand going back to the Senate. In Minnesota, our guest earlier, Amy Klobuchar, going back to the Senate. And then these are coming in fresh. This is Heinrich going back to the Senate, New Mexico. And now I'll take them off the side of the building. Tammy Baldwin, Democrat in Wisconsin, going back to the Senate. Wyoming, Barrasso, a member of the senior Republican leadership, returning to the Senate. Here's the Michigan race, too early to call. Minnesota, too early to call. And at this hour, the U.S. Senate, let's pan down on the ice. Notice again, gray seats, undecided, 17 question marks with a 44-39 split in the U.S. Senate.
We should mention that in Minnesota is in the unusual...
Two pieces of business. Tennessee Senate, I'm told we're going to get an update live from the control room. Blackburn wins. She has turned away Bredesen in the Tennessee Senate race. Both parties fought hard for this one, but our projection is when it's all counted, all said and done, Marsha Blackburn will represent the United States Senate. Remember, this is a net hold for the Republican Party. This is the Corker seat. Back over to the board, Steve Kornacki we got a nail-biter in Florida.
One of the ballot initiatives in Florida that has raised a lot of national attention, including statewide effort, has been Amendment 4, which would restore voting rights to felons. This affects over 1 million potential voters in Florida, and this is now, we've got a projected answer on Amendment 4 in Florida. It looks to be, it looks like Amendment 4 will pass. That's a big deal, not just for the people directly affected by having their vote voting rights restored in Florida. This is a big issue of racial justice because of the racial disproportionate impact of this type of policy. And this was also thought to be a potential turnout issue in terms of Democratic turnout in Florida. With the Senate race and the governor's race still too close to call at this point, we'll wait to see whether this may end up being a determinative factor. We want to go now to, we have a call actually that I want to get to.
Let's also not forget Princeton undergrad, Harvard Law doesn't hurt. Here's another projection in Colorado. Wow. All right.
Democratic Governor Jared Polis in Colorado is the projection from NBC News. I should tell you, there will be a number of firsts this evening. Jared Polis will be the first openly gay man to ever be the governor of an American state, and congratulations to him for that.
Mr. Kornacki has new numbers from Florida.
Yes, it is coming down to
Nebraska, where we have a call for Fisher in the Senate race. There you go. We'll put it on up the side of the building. And can you take us out to Texas?
Let's check in on that Senate race. Everybody wondering, let's see here. Right now, Beto O'Rourke leading this thing. Wow, that is a 5,069 vote margin.
That's a huge turn in Kansas.
I think Sharice Davids just became the first Native American woman to serve in the House of Representatives.
Yes.
I believe she did, which
Yes.
is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing that, how old is this country? You know, the people who were here before it was a country, but that's a really important first.
Yeah.
Oh. We have another pickup, Steve?
Yes, we do. I can tell you now.
Chris Kobach just went down to defeat in Kansas.
Really? Did you just get a call?
Whoa.
Yeah, we're calling it right now. It just arrived in my ear, to my mouth, to the side of the building.
Wow.
Laura Kelly.
Wow. Kansas. Okay, you guys, this is a big deal. Chris Kobach you have heard of because Chris Kobach became a figure in the Trump administration without ever officially joining it. He was brought to Washington to head up the voter fraud task force.
And how did they do?
They didn't find any, but they made a lot of noise. And then Chris Kobach narrowly eked out a win in a Republican primary to become the Republican candidate for governor in that state, while also simultaneously serving as Secretary of State. He really has pioneered, a lot of the modern Republican politics of voter suppression, and has put the hardest, raggedest racial edge on all of it with glee. And Kansas is a fairly conservative state, and Kansas just finished up a very hard time with Sam Brownback as their governor. Chris Kobach losing, and looks like he's losing big to Laura Kelly, just speaks volumes from Kansas. I know so many Kansas Democrats. I just happen to know a lot of people in Kansas who feel like they're blue dots in a red sea. And both that House race.
Look at that graphic. That would indicate we have some poll closings coming up in 1 second. Here we are, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And a name you might recall from the modern history of American politics. That name is going to the U.S. Senate in Utah. Let's put it on the... Oh, we're trying. We don't have the board. Okay, we'll do this verbally. Mitt Romney is going to the U.S. Senate. There's the music. There's the building. There's the pan up, the stars. And Mitt Romney will be heading to the U.S. Senate as a freshman Republican. Imagine that. In Montana, the tester race, so many people curious about, they'll have to be curious for a bit longer. Too early to call. Ditto, Nevada. The Dean Heller race. Jackie Rosen's bid to unseat him, too early to call. Forgive the interruption.
That is going to be a
hour,
fascinating race to watch unfold.
Back onto the ice. Thank you, skaters, for giving us the ice tonight. There are the undecided gray Senate seats and a meter of its own in yellow.
And I mean, the way to look at this, yes, there's the yellow undecided seats, but that's the floor that the two parties have in terms of how many seats they've already guaranteed. You see how close the Republicans are to guaranteeing a continued majority in the Senate, but it's going to be a tooth and nail fight for every one of those ones that is yet to be decided. Steve's got some more calls, I believe, in House races.
We've got a bunch of House races that just came in, and let me take you through these. First of all, the second...
We should have expected them to be this close. But in Florida and Texas, we've got incredibly close races. We do have a new call right now, though. Brian?
Kevin Kramer the projected winner. Thank you so much. North Dakota Senate. No, that's okay. I was going to.
Can I throw this at you?
Here's the problem for the Dems. There were a lot of Democrats secretly, quietly holding out hope that, especially as Native Americans found a workaround to an effort to suppress their votes, that maybe Heidi Heitkamp might find a route to the finish. It was not to be tonight.
No, Heidi Heitkamp, the numbers were absolutely against her. Heidi Heitkamp running for re-election in a state where Donald Trump won by 36 points.
Yeah.
She won that seat 6 years ago by less than 3,000 votes, based in significant part by very, very strong support from Native American voters. Since then, the Republican-led state government passed a law that essentially makes it very difficult for Native Americans to cast votes.
Starting with what's your street address?
Yeah, North Dakotans who are Native American, who live on rural reservations, don't tend to have street addresses. They decided that it would be a rule that you had to have a street address on your ID in order to vote. It was a clearly suppressive effort targeted at 30,000 or so Native American voters. It's a very difficult national story. It's a civil rights story that will linger on for a long time after these results have resonated. But whether or not those votes would have been enough to keep Heidi Heitkamp in the Senate, she has lost her seat tonight.
And that's a net gain for the Republicans, net loss for the Democrats.
Decisively defeat
hey guys, I got to interrupt.
In the re-election.
We have a big call. This is out of Texas. NBC News is projecting Ted Cruz will return to the Senate from Texas, and Republicans will be guaranteed control of the Senate as a result.
Let's go to Chris Hayes, who is in El Paso at Beto O'Rourke headquarters. Chris Hayes, we've been going back to you all night long as we've been watching this almost unbelievably close race unfold. We are just able to project right now that longtime Texas Republican Congressman Pete Sessions, who I believe is an 11-term incumbent, has just lost his seat to Colin Allred, the Democrat who was challenging him there. NBC News now projecting that result. I have to ask if that's a surprise to you, Evan.
It's not a surprise. Dallas County has been described to me by Republicans as an absolute disaster for Republicans. Sessions is the largest nesting doll. Inside the Sessions doll are Texas Senate and Texas House seats, and everybody is going down in Dallas County if they're a Republican.
Yeah, and another call, too, just coming in the 11th district in Michigan. This Haley Stevens, a Democrat. This is a pickup, calling her the winner in this district. This one, not one of those Clinton districts. Actually, this is one of those districts Donald Trump did fairly well in 2016. One of the reasons he was able to win Michigan. But tonight, Haley Stevens, the Democrat in this open seat, is picking that up. Also, we can show you in that Texas district, you're talking about the 32nd Pete Sessions going down. This is another one of those Clinton districts. A Clinton suburban district, a long-serving Republican, as you say, being defeated there. So you start to add all these together, 11, 12, 13, 14 Democratic pickups right now, balanced against that one loss that they had, that one loss seat they have. That is a net gain of 13. Their magic number sits at 10 right now. 10 more to go. They get House control. They're sitting at 95% in our meter. And one more thing, just if you check in on this category we've been tracking, Clinton won districts that came into tonight held by Republicans. Look at this. There has not been a single Republican call. Republicans have not been called the winner in a single one of these districts tonight. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 Democratic pickups in there.
So, Steve, let's just reiterate. Right now, with Texas winning the...
Here we go.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. That's okay.
That's all right.
For the Democrats, this is ball game. NBC News is predicting the Democrats will control the House of Representatives. It's been a night of victories, and it's been a night of some painful losses for the Dems, but this, of course, hands a vital branch of government to the opposite party.
To be clear, with Texas Senate going to Ted Cruz, NBC is projecting that the Republican Party will hold the Senate. NBC is now projecting that the Democratic Party will hold the House. So this means divided control on Capitol Hill. There's a lot of other races to cover over the course of this evening, including a lot of fascinating governor's races. But in terms of overall control of the two houses of Congress, at this point, it looks like we know how that big part of the story is going to end.
Nicole Wallace, for the federal bench, you need the Senate. but for the investigations and the scrutiny that this
Arizona 2. The Arizona 2nd Congressional District, do we have, by any chance, a call in that race or any projection on what's going on there?
Yeah, let's take a look here. Well, let's go out to Arizona, as a matter of fact, and let's call it up. Yes, Ann Kirkpatrick, the Democrat. This was their sort of dream recruit in this district. Martha McSally vacating the seat to run for the Senate. We have now called her a victor here, and again continues that theme we've been talking about here. Clinton district. Democrats picking up another Clinton district, so that goes into the column as well. And just to check in on that column, we've been keeping tabs on tonight. Look at this still. Oh, and one more. Carlos Curbelo, Florida 26, Republican. Wow. He has conceded defeat. He has gone down tonight in that district. Again, Hillary Clinton won this thing by 16 points in 2016. Republicans had hoped he could pull it out, but no. So another Republican losing in a Clinton district.
Of the other important races for tonight, and that is governor's races. Let's run the board. Starting in Michigan with a Democratic pickup tonight. Whitmer is going to the State House. And in New Mexico, the Dems have picked up the seat with Grisham becoming the governor-elect. In Arizona, this is the incumbent, Doug Ducey, returning. In New York, we hardly even talked about this. Mario Cuomo, token 20% opposition tonight, going back to Albany. I'm sorry?
Andrew, not Mario.
Andrew, thank you.
Yep, sure.
Boy, you know, names are becoming tough at this hour. In Nebraska, Governor Ricketts going back. In Alabama, Ivey, the incumbent, going back. In Oklahoma, Stipp. This is a GOP hold. In South Carolina, McMaster. You have seen the president campaigning for the incumbent Republican Governor McMaster. Wyoming, a GOP hold. Mark Gordon, the governor-elect. In Vermont, the incumbent Governor Scott headed back. And let's go into too close to call. South Dakota, Kristi Noem staying within a couple points. Billy Sutton in Florida, too close to call. We've talked about this a lot tonight. In Georgia, too early to call, much to Rachel's frustration.
3/4 of the vote in Georgia. It's killing me.
Do you want to introduce our guests?
Yes.
We have guests.
Introduce our guests.
Steve Kornacki, first of all, before you can meet our guests. I'm being corrected by the control room. We can't talk about our guests. Steve Kornacki, what do you... Just briefly, some business of tonight. We have divided up these twin Mississippi Senate races into something arbitrary. Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2. This is the latter. As predicted here, as we've been discussing, neither candidate reached 50% in a three-way race. There will be a runoff. As Rachel put it, kind of fixing it on the American calendar, 5 days after Thanksgiving.
That's right.
So
now,
there you have it.
When we were talking about this earlier, there was the prospect, had Beto O'Rourke beaten Ted Cruz in Texas, that this Mississippi Senate race might have been determinative in terms of who controlled the U.S. Senate. Now that appears they do not have that weight on their shoulders for that runoff, and that will change the character of it. My guess people have a hard road to hoe in Mississippi now that the other Republican candidate who drained 20% or whatever it was of the vote won't be in that race, and it'll just be head-to-head with Cindy Hyde-Smith.
Since we just passed into 11 p.m. Eastern Time, in California, we have a couple incumbents returning to the Senate. As we just mentioned, DeSantis, we are calling the apparent winner in Florida. Let's go out to California. The Senate race, Dianne Feinstein is going back to the U.S. Senate. In Hawaii, the Democrat Mazie Hirono is going back to the U.S. Senate. We talked about two races tonight in Minnesota. Tina Smith was the appointee going back to the U.S. Senate as a Democrat. In the state of Washington, too early to call. Remember these West Coast races, a lot of them just coming online for us. Steve Kornacki, we have not record kept, as we look at Republican control of the Senate, we have not record kept on a couple of House races And a couple of big names have fallen here in the last hour.
Yeah, let's go through what we've seen recently. Let's start in Virginia's 7th District. We were talking about this all night. Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat, we are now declaring the winner over Dave Bratt, the Republican incumbent. Richmond suburbs here. The bookends here. It was Bratt, 2014, knocked off Eric Cantor, one of the big political upsets of the modern era. 4 years later, he is losing his seat in Virginia's suburbs. That's a Democratic pickup. The 22nd District of New York, Claudia Tenney, very conservative Republican incumbent. She is going to lose to Anthony Brindisi. How about the 19th District, the Hudson Valley? Wow. John Faso, Republican incumbent, losing to Antonio Delgado. Of course, the ads Republicans ran against Delgado in this campaign became a source of controversy. Delgado is going to win there. The 6th District of Illinois, outside Chicago. Peter Roscom, Republican incumbent, Clinton District. We've been seeing this combination a lot tonight. He is going to be defeated. The 1st District of Iowa. This is one of those places that surged by double digits towards Donald Trump in 2016. Northeast Iowa, Rod Blum, Republican incumbent. He is going to lose. Abby Finkenauer.
Iowa.
I think she was poised to be the youngest woman ever elected to Congress, and then you had that big upset in Joe Crowley's district earlier this year. I think she will now become the 2nd youngest woman ever elected to Congress. That a Democratic pickup as well. There's also, we can tell you about New Jersey's 2nd District here. Jeff Van Drew has declared victory, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer here. But Seth Grossman, this is an interesting story that is this close. Seth Grossman was disowned by the National Republican Party and denounced by the chairman of the New Jersey State Republican Party for racist and bigoted comments. The words there of the New Jersey Republican chairman. The fact that it's sitting at 50 to 48, and we haven't officially called it at this point at this hour, is somewhat noteworthy. But if Van Drew does hang on in our projection, then that would be a Democratic pickup there as well. Also, just coming across the wire, the 7th District of Texas. This is Harris County, Houston, suburban. This is another one of those. I can show you on the screen here. A Hillary Clinton district in 2016 flips to the Democrat. Lizzie Fletcher taking out John Culberson. You want to go way back in time, a half a century, when the Republican Party was in its infancy in Texas. Where did it have one of its first big breakthroughs? It was in this district, and it was by a man named George H.W. Bush, who won a House seat here about 50 years ago. Seat's been Republican since then. No longer. Democrat Lizzie Fletcher takes that one over. And we have also, we said there were a couple of seats here that Republicans were targeting, that were Democratic seats that Republicans were targeting. One more Republicans have picked up. This is the 8th District of Minnesota. This is the Iron Range. This is an area that really swung hard to Donald Trump in 2016. Blue collar, traditionally Democratic, swung hard to Trump. Open seat, Republican. A former hockey player there, Pete Stauber, wins it. So put this together. You got those 2 Republican gains so far in Democratic territory. Then you have 18, 21, 22. So a net Democratic gain at this hour of 20 seats. Of course, 23 officially gives them control. There's a whole bunch more where they seem to be on the verge of victory. So they're very close to crossing that line of 23. And then the question just becomes, how high are we counting in terms of majority?
Steve, can I just ask you an Iowa question? I see you've got another couple of Iowa districts up there that you don't yet have calls in. How is Steve King doing? I'm just wondering if he's going to be in a caucus with Mr. Grossman, if Mr. Grossman gets that race.
Yeah, there you go. About 135,000 votes in here, about a third of the district. Let's see where this is coming in from. It is sort of scattered. I mean, this is a Trump plus 27 district here. So Steve King, this is the most conservative part of Iowa, sort of northwest Iowa right there. Steve King leading by 5,000 votes, about a third of the vote in right there. And also one more while we're on Iowa, we can just check in on David. And look at this now, with almost 2/3 of the vote in. David Young, Republican incumbent here, trailing by 8 points, a 20,000 vote gap. So I'll tell you, there is a scenario right here. 4 districts in Iowa. You got the Democrat surviving in the other one. Rod Blum goes down in 1. If David Young goes down in 3, and if Steve King, after this, survives in 4, after the chairman of the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee denounced him, he could be, if he survives, the only Republican coming back to Congress from Iowa, which might enhance his stature in a backward way.
And right now, the Iowa governor's race is too close to call at this point in terms of whether or not, in terms of statewide elected Iowa politicians as well. Do you have that? Yeah.
You can put that right up on the screen. Kim Reynolds.
Too early to call, forgive me.
Kim Reynolds, of course, and she's the interim governor, trailing by about 25,000 votes right now in that governor's race.
Iowa, Kansas, these states are turning out to be absolutely fascinating tonight in terms of Democratic prospects. I do want to give us one additional call. I've been focusing on governor's races tonight, keeping an eye on those, and we do have a call in Oregon. Now, we think of Oregon as a deep blue state, but there was question as to whether or not the Oregon incumbent governor, Kate Brown, would be able to win. That's not Kate Brown. That is a projection. NBC News projecting that in California, the governor will be Democrat Gavin Newsom. And thank you, Oregon governor, projected winner Kate Brown, the Democrat, who is the incumbent governor, facing actually a tough race in Oregon against Newt Mueller, who is the Republican there. Oregon has quirky politics right now and has been through some gubernatorial scandals with the antecedent governor to Kate Brown, but she will be winning tonight. And Gavin Newsom will now become a figure of national renown as the head of the Republic of California.
Our family has changed yet again here in the studio. Nicole Wallace, Donna Edwards, Steve Stabenow reelected. We have this much into us while we were having that conversation in Michigan, the returning Democrat. Another break for us. We'll have more when we come right back. Still more live vote returns coming in. We are back in a couple races we have not record kept on, and that is projected winner of the Ohio governor's race. John Kasich, of course, was not in the race. Mike DeWine and Tim Walz in Minnesota for governor. Georgia, all of you wondering, too early to call, early in terms of the counting of the vote.
Let's go right to Steve Kornacki.
Yeah, it's a milestone moment here. We said Democrats need to get a net gain of 23. They lost those two earlier, but their 25th gain, which is a net gain of 23, just came in. It is the 2nd District of Minnesota. Jason Lewis, we were talking about him a minute ago. He has been unseated. We're projecting Angie Craig defeats Jason Lewis. And again, what that means, we have 25 Democratic pickups here on their target list. We look at the seats that Republicans were going after. They've picked up 2, that one in the Iron Range, that one in Pennsylvania, 14. So right now, that gives the Democrats the net gain of 23. And that's what they needed to get control.
Amy Klobuchar was live on our air earlier this hour saying that the Democrats would flip House seats in Minnesota.
Here's an important state, a tough state to figure out politically because it's several states in one, as so many of them are. But here is your new projected GOP senator from the great state of Missouri. We had an interview with Claire McCaskill earlier this evening. She knew she faced a tough road. This one's going to hurt the Democrats. They wanted it badly. Claire McCaskill is giving what amounts to a concession speech. Let's listen in. Here we go. There's our projection animation. This is Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, the incumbent, returning. And Steve Kornacki tells us we've had 2 flips in the intervening moments.
2 more House races to tell you about. Illinois' 14th District, exurbs of Chicago. Romney won this district. Trump.
A bit of news from upstate New York. Chris Collins has won re-election to the House.
While under indictment.
Way up there. Yep.
That's not that easy. You got to give him credit. When you're facing federal corruption charges, that's a hurdle that most people don't have.
That is an uncommon hurdle, but he's been richly rewarded for staying in the race. His victory tonight over Nate McMurray in the northern tier of upstate New York.
Congratulations, District 27.
And let us, without delay, go out to El Paso, Texas, where Chris Hayes is under active threat of being asked by security to leave. The party's over. It gets
Chris
better.
Collins has just been reelected in New York 27. And the other sitting Republican congressman who has been charged with 60 felonies, Duncan Hunter, has been charged with a 60-count federal corruption indictment, and Duncan Hunter has just been reelected by the proud voters of California Congressional District 50.
Republican values. They do not value law-abiding. It's so funny. I mean, Donald Trump, lock her up, law and order. Like, we've now got 2 indicted Republicans who won tonight. Republicans no longer.
In the great state of Maine, NBC News can now project that Paul LePage, controversial Republican governor, will be succeeded by a woman and a Democrat. Sean Moody has conceded the Republican running against Janet Mills. Janet Mills will become the first woman governor of Maine, I believe, and a Democrat succeeding the controversial, sort of pugnacious governor of Maine, Paul LePage, who was Trumpy before Trump. Governor LePage, on the eve of the election, announced to his constituents that now that he was leaving office as governor, he'd be moving to Florida full time.
Yep.
Really? Literally, he announced that yesterday.
The climate is better and the taxes are less.
Yeah. So again, had he said that earlier on, it would have shed some light on his governing decisions.
So enough of Maine winners for the former governor of the...
Very important race for Democrats now, just in the sense that they have lost so many other seats tonight. This would be a pickup if they are able to get it.
Much appreciated, Steve. Thank you.
Another result from California, Devin Nunes has won re-election.
Yes, Devin Nunes has not won re-election as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
No.
He will now be he will either move off of that committee or he will go back to being the ranking member. Devin Nunes was a target both for Democrats and Republicans nationwide. He received a tsunami of Republican money because of his role on the Intelligence Committee, using that committee to the benefit of President Trump, to such incredible conservative media acclaim. Andrew Jans gave him a run for his money in his district. Things aren't usually even that close for Devin Nunes in his deeply conservative district, but obviously Devin Nunes winning comfortably tonight at home in California, 22.
Don't know about the Rohrabacher race with any certainty yet. Our man in California is Lawrence O'Donnell and is standing by. Lawrence, California.
Legal life changes utterly tonight. Robert Mueller cannot be fired. That threat is over. Donald Trump will try to fire him again. He will want to try to fire him again. But more than one voice in the White House will explain to him that if he does that, the House of Representatives will begin an impeachment investigation that day. And so Robert Mueller is one of the big winners tonight in terms of the security of his position and in his ability to go forward with his special prosecuting investigation. And that is a change for Donald Trump. The game he's been playing with the firing of Jeff Sessions, which has always been about the firing of Robert Mueller, because you get, or basically the removal of Robert Mueller's effectiveness by putting a new attorney general supervising Robert Mueller. That game ended tonight. And that is a huge change for the future of the Trump presidency and for the future of the way things are going to work in Washington.
Lawrence, I've just been told the Republicans have grabbed South Dakota governor. Noem is the victor after a long night. Kristi Noem from the House of Representatives has defeated Billy Sutton with 94% of the raw in. That is our projection. And Mr. Kornacki has alerted us to a drama in Wisconsin. We've been covering this on a slow motion basis all night.
It feels like
a bunch of redistricting matters on the ballot, and I think we've got a board for these. In Colorado and in Michigan and in Utah, they were all voting on whether or not basically the state should be ungerrymandered. Colorado, Michigan, and Utah are states where we've been watching this tonight. It looks like in all of these, it has either passed or it is leading. And so we've been talking about the sort of structural advantage that Republicans have in terms of gerrymandered congressional districts. Well, in Colorado, in Michigan, and it may be ultimately even in Utah, that redistricting will now be done in a nonpartisan way. It's to ungerrymander, untilt the playing field.
Imagine that. How are we going to survive?
Good government, I know, in real life. One last one to tell you about.
Too much excitement than they banked on, especially coming off terrible loss for the Packers. Sorry about that, Charlie. Well, it was still sad. Angus King in the great state of Maine, the independent who caucuses with the Democrats, is going back to the Senate. Nicole, Maine is an interesting situation. You've got King and you've got a senator who went through the ringer on Kavanaugh. Susan Collins really, it was an interesting journey for fans of Susan Collins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we haven't talked about Kavanaugh that much tonight, the Kavanaugh effect. I mean, I think that
it was a big deal where people were casting their votes, I think.
He was very blunt about that. but then she lost tonight. There's the result right now. Katie Arrington, the Republican, has lost to the Democrat in South Carolina's 1st district. That's Joe Cunningham winning there again. That was Mark Sanford's district. Alan, you've been... I've got to jump. I love the keys to the White House. I got to jump in for 1 second here because we now have a call to make at 3:32 in the morning in the Wisconsin governor's race. Tony Evers has done it. He is the apparent winner in that governor's race, defeating Scott Walker, who has won twice and another time when he held off the recall election. Scott Walker goes down in the state of Wisconsin to Tony Evers. Your reaction?
This is a solace for Democrats in governor's races after Gillum and what looks like Abrams.
Welcome back to MSNBC's coverage of Election Day, or I guess the day after Election Day, officially now, because on the West Coast it's 12:39. It is 3:39 in the morning where we're sitting in our studio here at Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. Thanks for staying up with us. Our coverage of a major midterm flip continues right now. I am Willie Geist. We already know Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives. We're still waiting on results from some late races before we know by just how much. The Democrats already passed the minimum net gain of 23 to lock up the majority, now trying to run that up. Republicans, meanwhile, still in control of the Senate. A few late races still too close to call will determine the margin of victory. Looking right there at the Arizona Senate race, Martha McSally, the Republican, Kirsten Sinema, too close to call. The split there, about 22,000 votes. In the state of Florida, back here on the East Coast, 38,000 votes or so separate Governor Rick Scott, the Republican, and the incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson. We're still waiting to call that one. In Montana, 2,425 votes between the incumbent Democrat John Tester and the Republican Rosendale in the state of Montana. Just within the last hour, we've been able to project that Jackie Rosen, the Democrat, will be the next senator from the state of Nevada come January, knocking off the Republican incumbent Dean Heller there. In the Nevada's governor's race, Steve Sisolak, a Democratic gain, a pickup there, another in the Democrat category in the governor's mansions as well. We have 2 late calls in Nevada that we can make there. As I said, the NBC decision desk projecting Democrat Jackie Rosen unseating Dean Heller. She's already made her speech. Dean Heller, the Republican, has already conceded there. So let's bring back in. Do we have Kornacki over there? We don't have Kornacki. Oklahoma's 5th district, Kendra Horn, is projected to defeat incumbent Congressman Steve Russell, flipping a seat that's been Republican since 1975. In Pennsylvania, Chrissy Houlihan claims the state's 6th district, north and west of Philadelphia. This was an open race after Congressman Ryan Costello announced earlier this year he would not seek re-election. And as I mentioned earlier, we will see the first Muslim women heading to Congress in January. Rashida Tlaib, an attorney and daughter of Palestinian immigrants, will represent Michigan's 13th district, while Ilhan Omar, who came to the United States as a Somali refugee, will replace Keith Ellison in Minnesota's 5th district. History also made in Massachusetts tonight, with Ayanna Pressley becoming the state's first black congresswoman. And I want to go across the room now to Adrian. Adrian, just a snapshot of some of the new faces that we'll see.
So what's your top goal when you get to Congress? What would you like to see? What direction would you like to see Congress move?
I would love to see more bipartisanship. I'll tell you the things in my district that we...
Wow. All right. I just want to break in for a moment. We have an apparent winner in the Connecticut governor's race, Ned Lamont, Democrat from Connecticut. So that is a win for the blue in the state of Connecticut. All right, Congressman Costello, the president issued a warning to House Democrats thinking about launching the governor's race in Alaska. Going Republican, Mike Dunleavy wins that race. Back with me, my panel, and also Congressman from the state of Florida, or former Congressman David Jolly. I got to go to you first. Charlie Sykes.
Made history last night. And diversity in Congress is important. If we are not sending people to Washington, D.C. who look like the communities they serve, then we're not getting the best
but first, we're going to talk about the state of Montana.
Yes.
The race there. John Tester, Democrat in Montana. We have been waiting, obviously, since last night, and that Senate race is now being called. The winner, John Tester.
That was a very tight race. It was not being called because the split between the Democrat and the Republican was very close, but we have now called that Montana will remain a Democrat with a Democratic senator. That was the president giving a very long, almost hour and a half long press conference. Any moment now, we are going to be hearing
from Republicans who were victorious last night. White nationalist Steve King, who won re-election to Congress in Iowa, and 2 Republicans currently under indictment won re-election. Chris Collins in New York, who's been charged with securities fraud, and Duncan Hunter, who's accused of spending more than $250,000 of campaign money on personal expenses. Greg Gianforte, the Montana congressman who once body slammed a reporter and then lied about it, also kept his seat. There was good news for Democrats in the House, too. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. In Georgia, Lucy McBath declared victory, although the race hasn't yet been officially called. In New Mexico, Deb Haaland became one of the first Native American women elected to Congress.
Well, last night, that Trump-endorsed candidate, Danny Tarkanian, he lost that race, too. He lost that House seat to a Democrat named Susie Lee. But the president believes he has real. In Illinois, Republican Congressman Randy Hultgren lost his seat to a nurse, a Democratic candidate named Lauren Underwood. Lauren Underwood and Randy Hultgren, for that matter, neither of them were on anybody's radar. Lauren Underwood came out of nowhere and won that seat through sheer hard work and raw talent. Lauren Underwood is going to be a national star. I am telling you, she's actually going to be our guest here a little later on this hour. You are going to want to see that. Last night, Democrats flipped control of the Colorado.
We have more news on that front just out tonight. NBC News has declared Democratic Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema as the apparent winner in the Arizona Senate race, giving her a narrow victory over Republican Congresswoman Martha McSally. Sinema now makes history as the first woman senator from that state, and more history because she has turned Jeff Flake's Republican Senate seat blue. And Sinema reacted a short time ago.
It won't be easy. And it won't.
From a few outstanding races for Congress in New Jersey, NBC News has just declared Democrat Andrew Kim to be the apparent winner over Republican incumbent Tom MacArthur. So that is a Democratic pickup. Same story in California tonight, where NBC News now says that Democrat Josh Harder is the apparent winner over Republican incumbent Congressman Jeff Denham. Democrats also like their chances in other California congressional races that are as yet uncalled. Democratic challenger Gil Cisneros is within 150 votes of Republican Young Kim. This is a seat that's open. It was previously held by Republican Congressman Ed Royce, who retired. So if Gil Cisneros wins there over Young Kim, that would be a Democratic pickup as well. Same story in the 45th District in California, where there's an incumbent Republican Congresswoman, Mimi Walters, who now trails her Democratic challenger, Katie Porter. Porter is now up by just under 4,000 votes or so over Mimi Walters. I should tell you that Mimi Walters has now started saying that the Democrats are somehow stealing this race from her. But the vote count just proceeds. There may literally be millions of votes left to be counted in California.
Democrats have notched yet another flip in the House, this time in Maine. Jared Golden toppled Republican Bruce Paulquin, the last remaining Republican House member from New England. Democrats currently have a net gain of 35 seats. This is their largest gain since 1974. We have another way to show you what that means in terms.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. We do have a call in the Senate race in Mississippi. NBC News is projecting that Sidney Hyde-Smith is the winner of that race. Mike Espy coming up short in Mississippi. And John Howman, that doesn't come as a surprise. According to the polling, it indicated that all the information indicated that Mike Espy was going to have to pull off something of a miracle tonight. We'll come back to that later in the hour. But